I'm going to do a series of videos to prepare you for your year-end exam, so some revision videos. Today the topic I'm going to cover is accounting equation. So they ask you to complete the table for a series of transactions. The first one, withdrew cash for 1,200 Rand for the owner's personal use as well as for petty cash. 1/3 was for petty cash, and then there's a third of 1,200 rather, which is 400 is for petty cash, and the balance for the owner's use, that will be drawings. Okay, the accounts that are going to be affected here, let's start with bank. Bank is decreasing because you're taking money out of your bank, and bank is an asset going down, so you put a minus under A. And drawings is negative owner's equity, so you debit drawings and you decrease owner's equity. Just remember please that A must equal O plus L, so make sure that your signs here, if you've got a minus on the left hand side of that equal sign, you've got a minus on the right hand side of the equal sign, therefore that transaction is equal. And then for the rest, for the petty cash, bank is an asset going down again, and petty cash is another asset going up. So in other words, one asset is increasing and the other asset is decreasing. Number 2, a credit note received from K. Ely for stock costing 420 which was returned was posted to the account of K. Lai. If you receive a credit note, it means you've returned. So we're talking about creditors here. Now this one is sort of like a trick question because one creditor needs to go up, the other creditor needs to go down. In other words, creditors control will be both debit and credit, and one liability will go up and the other liability will decrease. Number 3, when the owner took stock with a cost price of 450 and a selling price of 650, the bookkeeper recorded this transaction at selling price. You need to correct the error. In other words, you decreased trading stock here by 650. You should have only decreased it by 450. So you need to add back to trading stock, which increases your asset, and decrease drawings. If drawings goes down, owner's equity will go up. Number 4, a debtor was declared insolvent. He gave the business a vehicle valued at 18,500 in settlement of the amount he owed. Okay, so if he's giving the business a vehicle, the value of your vehicles is increasing, so you debit vehicles, that's an asset going up, and debtors control is going to decrease because he's basically paid back his account, so the other asset will go down. Don't forget, anything that doesn't change, show the 0. Then an amount of 15,000 Rand was owed to West Bank. Use internet banking to pay half the loan as well as interest. We're going to need to use 2 lines here. One to pay back the loan and the other for interest. So half of 15,000 is 7,500. Loan is a liability which is decreasing. You decrease liabilities on the debit side, minus under L, and bank is an asset going down, minus under A. And then interest on loan is an expense, so you debit it. Bank is an asset going down. So your asset decreases, and interest on loan, which was an expense, will decrease owner's equity. Remember, owner's equity is the worth of the business. The worth of the business goes down if you've got expenses. The next one, a debtor whose account had previously been written off returned and paid 1,500 Rand for the amount which he had owed. When somebody whose account had been written off repays that amount, we call that bad debts recovered, which is income. So you credit bad debts recovered because it's an income, and you debit bank. Bank is an asset going down. If you've got income here, the worth of the business, owner's equity, will increase. Then number 7, an EFT for 900, discount 90, issued to repay a creditor was recorded as 9,000. In other words, we decreased our bank and decreased our creditor by 9,000, but we should have only decreased it by 900. And then the discount also should have only been 90 Rand, and we recorded it as 900. So starting with the EFT amount, we need to add back to bank now because we took bank down by too much, and we need to add to creditors control because we decreased creditors control too much. Liabilities increase and assets, your bank increases. And then in terms of the discount, we increased discount by too much, so now we need to decrease discount received. If you decrease in income, your worth of the business, your owner's equity goes down. And if we decrease creditors control with the discounts and we use too much, we need to add that back amount to creditors control as well. So you're going to increase your liability. Then a refund was received from a creditor as the business had overpaid their account. Okay, in this case here, this looks a little bit strange when you have a look at the answer. I think it's easy enough to understand that you are debiting bank because you're receiving money and your asset goes up. Now it looks like we're increasing our creditors control because we are going to credit that. Basically what happens, if you've overpaid your creditor, the creditor is going to have a negative balance. Okay, in other words, they owe us. Once they've paid us back, they owe us nothing. So to go from a negative number up to 0, you need to add to your creditors that 200 Rand and add to your liabilities. So you're basically increasing the account from a negative up to 0. And then the bank statement reflected a debit entry for interest. If the bank is debiting your account, they are saying that we owe them the interest. If we owe them the interest, that's interest on overdraft. So you debit interest on overdraft, that's an expense which decreases owner's equity, and you credit bank because your asset is decreasing. You can get these accounting equation transactions for any transaction. So you can get them for year-end adjustments, you can get them for closing transfers, anything. So you need to know your double entry. Just remember those 3 questions. What accounts change? Secondly, what type of account is each? In other words, is it an asset, expense, income, capital, or liabilities? And third, is the account increasing or decreasing? So as long as you know your basics and your types of accounts, you should be able to do any transaction under this format. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.